There is a Viva statistics that says that 20% of the time of a brand manager is spent reviewing content. First, the most known one, the regulations. Obviously, AI can help you here and to go further than just translation and really adapt to your local regulations. Adapt to the wording that you're allowed to use, adapt even to the labeling of your specific brands. I lived here for a few years and I even got married to a Spanish woman, to a woman from Barcelona. Which is why I decided to come a bit earlier. I arrived yesterday and I wanted to walk a bit along the beach to enjoy the fresh air and all that. And I saw a restaurant where they had a sign written, "Personalize your own paella." I jumped on the idea, it's really cool. Because I like paella, but to be honest, I don't really like seafood. So I just entered and I said, "Hey, can I have a paella with chicken, please?" And they said, "I'm sorry, we don't have chicken." I'm like, "Why?" We said, "Personalize your paella." Like, "Yeah, but you know, not a lot of people ask chicken, so we are not going to have chicken just for one person." And I was like thinking, that does remind me of something. That just reminds me of Pharma. Why, will you ask? Well, simply because Pharma doesn't have chicken in their kitchen. Or better said, we don't have enough content in our tool set in order to create true personalization. Don't get me wrong, we do create tons of content, but it's usually long form, it's static, it's not adapted to a specific use case or to a specific user. And if you really want to create content, it's expensive. You need to go to an agency, you need to brief them, they come back, you go back, so you know it probably better than me. And then what we discussed a few times today, M&R process, that's going to take weeks, and so on and so forth. Actually, there is a Viva statistics that says that 20% of the time of a brand manager is spent reviewing content. That's 1 day a week. Or if you prefer, we could have the brand managers coming at 11 every day if they wouldn't have to review the content. That's pretty amazing. What's the consequence of that? We create less content or less specific content. And it gets difficult to get actually true personalization. When I say true personalization, is really have a content adapted to a single person, not to a group of persons, that's the segmentation. Knowing how much the content costs, would you actually create a video for a single person? I'm not speaking about just saying, "Dear David," in the video, or "Yes, it's great, you're from Switzerland." No, I'm saying true personalized content. Well, probably you wouldn't. Now, I'm pretty sure that a few of you get stressed and say, "Yeah, but I am doing personalization. Look, I've got email and I'm personalizing my emails." And yes, that's supposed to be me, but AI doesn't work very well all the time. So, again, email or even website personalization is interesting and it's a very good step to start. But it's just one drop in the ocean. It's just one channel. Have a look at that. You can see 4 categories of different channels from social networks, search engine, and so on. Each of these categories has different types of channels within it. And each of these types has several publishers. That makes a huge list of different channels for which you would have to personalize. Email, websites, even chatbots that I've heard today are just a very tiny part of that. That's not enough. You also need to adapt to the type of content they want, to the format of content they want. I don't like videos, I like text. But then some people like big text, small text, medium text. It depends on what you're looking at, when you're looking at it, where you're looking at it. You may have video, hybrid, and all that. What happens if you start multiplying the various messaging that you have with all the channels, with all the formats? Well, you get content explosion. And content explosion is the main issue of personalization. If you want true personalization, you need a lot of content. And that's extremely difficult to do in our industry with approvals and all that. Yes, You may automate some of the approval, but still, if you have to do that for 1,000, for 2,000 different pieces of content, even if you only spend 5 minutes on the approval of this piece of content, that's going to be a lot of time. Which is why today, we're going to speak about something else than personalization. Something that can actually bring value to you over the coming months, and not in a year and a half. Imagine 6 months to just get the data. We all spoke about the data, so we need at least 6 months to prepare all that, another 6 months to create the content, and then another 6 months for a tool that actually puts the data together with the content. Well, it's crazy. Here, I'm going to speak about something that will actually help you improve your processes within a few months, if you are very fast. And that's localization. Localization is something that we all do, but you need that in order to actually interact with your HCPs or with your patients. But first, let's do a small poll. As I've seen that text may be complicated, I thought I'm going to do it with hands raised. So the question is, what is the percentage of content that you think is being reused in our industry? By reused, I mean translated, adapted to a specific country, or used in a modular way. So raise your hand if you think that it's more than 60%. Cool, you have at least one person. 2. Then raise your hand if you think that it's more than 30%. Yeah, we do still have quite a few. And raise your hands now, the rest of you, if you think it's less than 30%. So you're actually quite good. The right answer is the last one. Based on a Viva statistic, it's 9%. 9%, that means that every time you create 10 pieces of content, 9 of them are never reused. And reused, again, as I told, is including localization. That means if you create 10 pieces of content in global, probably 9 of them will not be used by the local team. That's just crazy. And now just think about the price of all that. Let me tell you a bit a story of one of our customers. For obvious reason, we cannot say the name, so I'm going to call it Redfield. And Redfield was launching a new product and had a brand manager who actually created customer journeys with content for this new product. So customer journeys are basically a lot of various touch points put together to bring the HCP from one point of view to another point of view, from not knowing you to knowing you know that better than you. And as the company was not very digitally advanced, he actually focused on emails. So he got a lot of good emails. He got feedback from HCPs on the emails to make sure that they were good, and so on. And what happens? None of the countries were using those emails. Why? Because they don't have time to localize. It's not only about translating, putting it in a tool that makes word by word the change. No, you need also to adapt the local regulations and so on and so forth. So nobody was using it. Of course, we had them. That's my job. But I'm going to tell you how we had them a bit later. First, I want to make you work a bit again. First, raise your hand if you work in an international company. So a company active in more than one country. Full. Keep your hands up. I'm going to make you work a bit because we have soon the coffee shop. Then keep your hand raised if you've seen localization of assets in your company. If you may be not working directly with it, but if you've seen your company localizing assets. Cool, we even have an additional hand. And keep your hands raised now. And only lower it if you've seen the localization projects actually working very smoothly, with no delay, no headache, no issue, and all that. Cool, so we're one efficient company in the room. And that's my point. Everybody is doing localization, and everybody has an issue with localization. But we still speak mostly about personalization and this kind of thing in this room. So why don't we move the discussion towards localization? In a nutshell, the way I see it is personalization is a nice to have. If you don't personalize, but you have valuable content, that's the most important part. You always need to bring value to the customer. Otherwise, personalization or not, nobody will read it. And it's going to be in the spam circle than that one of the other speakers showed. But if you don't personalize, you will still reach your HCPs. But if you don't localize, you can have way less content in order to reach out to your HCPs, and that's why it's a must-have. Compare it to my paella of earlier. If I remove the chicken, I still have my paella. That's the personalization. But if I remove the rice, then I don't have a paella anymore. That's the localization. So we're in an AI conference, so let's see how AI can actually help you with personalization. So I'm going to take the challenges that you usually have with localization and just see how AI can apply there. First, the most known one, the regulations. So obviously, AI can help you here and to go further than just translation and really adapt to your local regulations. Adapt to the wording that you're allowed to use, adapt even to the labeling of your specific brands. So it's not only about translation anymore, it's really about doing all the work that you usually do after the translation. But it's not all. So even though I'm Swiss, there are more than regulations in life. There is also the culture and the differences. If you speak to a Spanish HCP, you're going to speak different in a different way than if you speak to a German HCP, and you need to include that. And that's also where AI can help. I actually love the tone of voice with AI. I usually use it when I have to send an email when I'm in a bad mood. Just put it in ChatGPT and I said, please rewrite it in a nice way. And that did allow me to write quite a few files, so I actually love that. But local preferences is not only about the country, it's also about the people. You may have a brand manager who actually likes to go straight to the point, who wants to avoid everything which is marketing and fluff. You're going to have one who is very specific on the way he or she communicates, want to have small paragraphs, small sentences. Some others want to have as much text as possible. And all that are things that can nowadays be automated with AI. And then you can even go one step further and start including local references and local KOL or DOL in your documents without having to go manually and edit it. The other challenge that we see very often with localization is global is creating the assets on day one, but in your country, you launch in year 2 or in year 5. The global team will not necessarily re-update the document again and again. Where AI can help you is actually by using these documents, localize it with the first 2 points, but then include all the learnings that the teams in the other countries had over the 2 years, all the new objections that they've heard, in order to actually improve this content. So you end up with not only the global version localized, but the global version localized, upgraded with any new thing that the countries that have already launched may have learned. The last challenge, pretty sure you all have it, is time. Oh, actually, you all don't have it. We don't have time. And that's where AI, again, can help. Localization does take a lot of time, and that's why a lot of people don't localize many things. AI localization can help you actually save some time in order to do this work that you would have done otherwise. Now we're back to my initial example, red pill. If you remember, the brand manager had created these customer journeys and nobody was using them. What did we do? First, discussing also with the omnichannel manager, we saw that it was a company that was not very digitally advanced, so we couldn't go with crazy things. What we did is start small. As also another speaker said earlier, that's one of the key things to have a good adoption. We started with one country and one channel, Germany and email. And for that, we started this sitting together with the local team, with the brand managers, with the sales managers, with the MLR managers, and with the medical teams. And we got the inputs from all of them, inputs in all types, sometimes just discussions, sometimes we were given the brand plans, the core messages, the checklist of compliance. That's amazing, because we could also include all that in our tool area. Area is the platform that we use to create AI use cases for the pharma industry. I'm going to tell you a bit more about it later. So we included all that in the tool, and we were then able to create these emails on the fly. The results? The team started to actually send an email more or less every second week. There were also rules and all that, but the average was every second week. And we could see a cookie engagement on the website being very high, meaning it's not only about, oh, I could send more emails. We did follow up also to see not only that people clicked, but what did they do after the click? did they actually watch the video, stay in there? And we could see that the engagement that was increased was of high quality. As a result, we recommended the pilots to 3 countries, 3 brands, and 2 channels. But I know you like numbers. I think half of you are working in data, so let's go a bit in numbers. Just imagine one email that will cost you maybe 3,000 euros to localize. That's an average price we've seen with various customers, small or large, with agencies. Then you multiply that by 24, one email every 7 weeks. You multiply it by 2 channels. You multiply it by 3 countries, you multiply it by 3 brands, and you actually get 2 million euros of savings with a simple, let's say, solution. So we started with something very small where you said, okay, why should I implement something just for an email for one country? And we ended up with something that created for them around 1 million euros of savings every year. But it's not only about cost savings. There is much more to AI in localization than that. You've got faster time to market, improved output quality, and scalability. Let me dig a bit more into each of these. Faster time to market. I have another example for this one. We had a company that was about to launch a product, and the launch was advanced 3 months. What happened? The product manager was not yet ready to release the assets. But the German team actually wanted to get ready for the launch. So they started booking slots with publishers for advertisements, emails, and so on. Once the global manager was ready and released the assets, we had 2 weeks between the day we got the assets and the day we had to provide them to the publishers. Now you're going to say, in my company it's never like that, we plan in advance, maybe. But the reality we see very often is that people are always late in anything, and the time crunch is very important. We start with the web team and the compliance team and the medical team. They said that they would take around 5 days for content approval after they received it, and the web team said we need 4 days in order to put that into an HTML. So now if you, again, go back to numbers, we have 2 weeks. We remove 5 days for approval, 4 days for web. How much is left for localization? 1 day. A single day for localization. So what did we do? We didn't go into the super planning and setup of an amazing tool. We didn't even use ARIA. We wanted to do something really fast. So we actually used ChatGPT, and we ingested previous public documents from the company, mostly websites that are available to everybody, so nothing we could not put in a generic tool. And also we ingested some of their key messages and some of their preferences that we knew. And within a few hours and some smart prompting, we were actually able to get them a localized web page. And the cool thing about it is it was not only localized in time, but it was also done in such quality that the reviewer team only spent 3 days in reviewing it. So we were actually ready 2 days before the deadline. I mean, there is no agency that will be able to actually localize. I'm not saying translating, I'm saying localizing from one day to the other. These are the amazing possibilities of AI in localization. But it's not only time improvement and cost. It's much more than that. You also have, in some cases, improved output quality. So you get better outputs. And for that, I have yet another example. We worked with a company whose global team was very active doing webinars. And every single week they had a new webinar. The local team said, yeah, we actually love the webinars, but first, we don't have time to translate them. Second, we know that our HCPs are not going to spend 45 minutes every week on watching a webinar. The omnichannel manager here knew that the process was that for each of the webinar, the team was actually creating a summary, a text summary, sometimes sending by email, sometimes just on the website. But they were doing that with an agency. So sometimes it took 2-3 weeks, so they had it quite late. When it was related to an event, then it didn't make that much sense. But also in all cases, it was quite expensive. So we went to the brand manager and said, oh, we can do that with AI. And the brand manager said, oh, no. I've got my agency, it works, don't screw up my process. So what did we do? Knowing the cost of creating these summaries, and the time that was lost and all that, the omnichannel manager came with the idea of actually showing by the proof that the quality of the AI output could be just as good as the quality of the agency output. So we ingested in ARIA all the previous summaries and all the previous webinars that had been created, and we created summaries for 3 new webinars. We took the summaries of the agencies, and we simply showed both of them in a blind way to the to the brand managers. We did that for 3 different webinars, which then affected 3 different brand managers. In all 3 cases, they chose the AI version. It's not always going to be the case. Sometimes humans are going to create better content, I agree, but for quite a lot of different content, like summarization, AI is very strong, and you need to think about quality as an additional benefit of AI. The last benefit I'm going to discuss about today is scalability. This is an obvious one. If you have an agency that has to create a website and an email and a banner and a flyer and something else, that's going to take weeks. If you do it with AI, you can have it in a matter of hours or in a matter of days. If you need to change something, then you just change it, the system recreates it. You don't have to actually spend another week waiting for them to come back. So when you start creating a lot of content, the more you have, the more AI will be able to help you. And before I leave you, I just wanted to make a small summary of the various things that we've learned through all our AI projects, being localization or not actually. And most of them, we went through them during the case studies that I showed you. And I thought it might be easier to remember them by thinking about Paella. That's why you've got this nice acronym. So first, the P. The P is for proof. As you remember, it works much better if we can show the quality before going into a huge investment. Second one is adoption. You need to get everybody on board from the very beginning. It's just like a chain. If somebody's missing, it's not going to work. Is make it simple to get started. We used ChatGPT for one of these solutions, and then they liked it, and they started going into more evolved system, automated system to reduce potential errors and all that. The way you launch it is important. Launch small so that you can control. Remember that it's not only about price and time, it's also about quality. And the last one, alignment. That's probably one of the most difficult one, also for omnichannel. Get all the teams aligned on the objectives, what you want to reach, what can be improved, how it should be improved. I spoke a couple of times about ARIA, but just let me tell you what's the idea behind it. So we started 5 years ago with this platform in order to be able to very easily create use cases for the pharma industry for AI, being for analytics or for content creation or even for medical research. The idea is that a lot of the basics of any tools are the same in terms of security, in terms of scalability, in terms of integration with various external tools. And with this platform, which is 100% dedicated to pharma, we are able to actually create very quickly use cases for these small pilots that you want to set up, and they can then be scaled in a very robust way. And the use case that's actually most interesting in my view and most used is what we call the content wizard. The content wizard actually helps you to create content from scratch. You can input all your brand messages and all your internal limitations and all that. The way we built it is to avoid actually hallucination that you would have in other tool and to also keep it very compliant. But it can also reuse the content, create it in a modular way. I didn't discuss that today, but you can take your email and actually create a banner out of that. The company who actually created the AI summaries for the webinars, they actually started using AI to create emails out of that, or to create a short summary that went on the website, and so on and so forth. Here you can see a simple screenshot where we basically compare the original version to the updated version. It's very important to also understand what has been changed, what has been removed. When you review, you can go much faster. I'd like you to remember one thing at the end of this talk, is that if you have to work on one thing that should have, on the commercial side, an impact in the coming weeks, it's really localization. Because it is, so localization with AI is a must-have today that we too often forget. Now, I'd love to start a discussion with you. So not only questions, but feel free also to react on what I said. If you think it's totally off topic, ask any question, being on localization, on area, or wherever you could actually have a nice paella in Barcelona.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. So before we go to the coffee break, we have still time for a few questions.
A quick question, and I much like the example of the use case for localization. Could you share whether you've had other successes in other use cases?
We've had also successes in creation, where basically some team were able to create emails and different formats based on all the content that we ingested. So we ingested existing content that they had, and we created both marketing emails and web-triggered emails based on this content without them to actually have to go and write down the content. So they were able to actually prompt it, saying create an email where I would forward these benefits adapted to these various personas. So in one click they were able also to create 4 emails for each of their 4 personas because we had included that in the system. And that allowed them not to go towards personalization, but to go towards segmentation, which, by the way, I think is really a quick win for most companies because segmentation is 20% as complicated as personalization, but will give you 80% of the benefits. So that's also something that's quite cool.
More questions? Okay, everybody want to go to the break now? Perfect. So thank you very much, David, and you can meet him on the